Welcome back, Holy Readers. This is episode 37 of Holy Holy. Listen, I'm so excited because you guys, new people are joining this community every single week. It's growing. Tell your friends, tell your family. If you're new to Holy Holy, you can jump in at our reading plan. You can find that on regenerationnashville.org/holy holy. If you don't want to read and you just want to listen, that's okay too. We're going to start this right here again in January. So just stick with it and see what God speaks to your heart. We're going to talk about the reading this week from September the 9th through the 15th, which covers Lamentations 3 through 5. So we finish it. Daniel 1 through 4. We'll talk about Daniel next week. Psalm 81, 110, 145, and 128. Ezekiel chapters 33 through 41 and Revelation 15 through 21. But we'll go ahead and finish up Revelation this week. All right, Lamentations. Lamentations is a powerful book. It's attributed to Jeremiah, and it is somber reflections on the destruction of Israel by the Babylonians in 586 BC. And it consists of 5 distinct poems. The first 4 are acrostics, which means that they start with, every verse starts with a letter of the Hebrew alphabet and goes down systematically. So chapter 1 is, it describes Jerusalem and Jerusalem's suffering as a widow that is grieving, a grieving widow. Chapter 2 reflects on the Lord's anger and the devastation brought about by the destruction. Chapter 3. So I want you to see this, that in series of 5 and 7, but series of 5, like we have here, these 5 poems, which each chapter is a different poem, right? So in Jewish literature, in Hebrew literature, the center one of 5 is the most important. So you think Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers, Deuteronomy. The center, Leviticus, is the most important. So right here, chapter 3, this acrostic, instead of one verse correlating with one letter of the alphabet, now it's every 3 verses to a letter of the alphabet. And so this is a personal lament of an individual, probably Jeremiah himself, expressing his anguish. But what he does in chapter 3, verses 22 through 23, I want you to see this. I'm going to read it to you. It says, the steadfast love of the Lord never ceases. His mercies never come to an end. They are new every morning. Great is your faithfulness. So Jeremiah is sitting here in the midst of all of this destruction. His heart is broken. Israel is grieving. They have been deported to other lands. Their temple is destroyed. And right in the middle of it, Jeremiah stops and he says, your mercies are new every morning, that when I wake up tomorrow and I'm still dealing with this, that I don't have to go on yesterday's mercy, but your mercy is new today. Can I tell you, friend, his grace is new for you today, and his grace will be new again tomorrow for you, that the mercies of God are there to undergird you as you suffer and as you pour out your sorrow, that God is faithful and he has a plan for your life. This is where we get our song, great is thy faithfulness, great is thy faithfulness, morning by morning, new mercies I see. All I have needed, thy hand hath provided. Great is thy faithfulness, Lord, unto me. I want you to sing that. Remember it, that God is faithful. Chapter 4 provides a more detailed picture of the suffering. And then chapter 5 is this prayer of restoration. It acknowledges the nation's sin, but it's pleading for God's mercy. Chapter 5 is not an acrostic, and you can just feel this like breakdown to where he's so overcome with grief that he doesn't even have the energy to write in an acrostic form anymore. It's just pouring out his sorrow. And that's the thing about the book of Lamentation, that your sorrow, that your grief has a place, that you can pour it out, but pour it out to the Lord in the context of remembering God's faithfulness. All right. Ezekiel 33 through 41. I'm so excited to share this with you. This is the Gog Magog oracles, the Gog Magog oracles. So Gog is this guy, and he's from Magog. And this originates in Genesis chapter 10 with the table of 70 nations. And we're going to start Holy Holy again in January. We're going to start right over, because just because we hear it once doesn't mean we know it. And there's so many great things to bring out, like the table of nations. So I'm hoping to really dive into that in January with you. But Gog, here in Ezekiel picks up the idea of Gog. And Gog is an archetype representing all of human rebellion. He becomes a symbol for all of human rebellion. And Ezekiel is wondering, okay, if God brings Israel back to their nation, and they have this renewed heart to serve the Lord, what about all of the evil nations surrounding them? How do we solve that problem of evil? And so what he does is he uses Gog as this archetype of all of evil. And he says, God puts a hook in Gog's nose and draws him out. And then our God Yahweh defeats Gog of Magog. So our God Yahweh defeats all of human rebellion and all of evil. That God is supreme, King of kings, Lord of lords, God of gods. But what's really neat is that John the Revelator picks this back up in the book of Revelation, chapter 20, verses 7 through 8. And so Gog and Magog represent the nations deceived by Satan. And in the final rebellion, God, Yahweh, defeats him. So it starts in Genesis, comes back again in Ezekiel, and then ends in Revelation where God defeats him. Powerful. All right, Psalm 110. This is a very, very famous psalm. And the first verse says, the Lord said to my Lord, sit at my right hand until I make your enemies a footstool for your feet. So this is a messianic psalm for both the Jewish and Christian communities, and they widely interpret it as pointing to the Messiah. So a Messiah is going to come through the line of David. Remember 2 Samuel 7. And Jesus, what's so cool is that Jesus interprets this about himself, that he is the Messiah. So he quotes this about himself in Matthew 22:44, Mark 12:36, and Luke 20:42 through 43 to point to Jesus's divinity and the fact that Jesus is the Messiah. And the words right hand, sit at my right hand. So to be at the right hand of someone that is enthroned is to have power and honor. So Jesus has power and honor, that he is from David's line, that he is the Messiah. All right, Revelation chapter 15 through 22. So this is through the end of the book. Next week, listen, I'm going to just tease you a minute, but next week I'm going to talk about the similarities between Ezekiel and Revelation. This time around, it really blew my mind. But Revelation 15 through the beginning of 16 talks about the 7 bowls. And these are 7 bowls of judgment that are poured out. Then you've got the fall of Babylon in chapter 17 through the beginning of 19. Remember that Babylon, by the time you get to Revelation, it's not an actual Babylon. It is an archetypal Babylon. For most likely, he had Rome in mind. John had Rome in mind as the Babylon as this evil city archetype. And so he's defining Rome as Babylon. And then you've got the final battle and judgment in Revelation 19:11 through 20:15. Then you've got the new heaven and the new earth in Revelation 21 to the beginning of 22. This is an important idea, and I hope to talk about this in Holy Holy 2025. But the new heaven and new earth is when God creates the earth and the heavens the way that it was in Genesis chapter 1, where there's this bridge that Jacob sees between heaven and earth, where heaven, think of the Lord's Prayer, that kingdom come, that will be done on earth as it is in heaven, so that this heaven comes to earth and we are one with God. And then the conclusion is Revelation 22:6 through 21. And this encompasses the final exhortations, warnings, and benedictions. So next week, when we start Luke, we're going to start the New Testament over again in this plan, and we'll read the New Testament again one more time for this year. So once we finish 2024, we'll have done the Old Testament once, the New Testament twice. All right, so email me, jasmine@regenerationnashville.org. You can find us at regenerationnashville.org/holyholy. All of our videos and our reading plan. You can watch this at YouTube, online and Facebook, or you can just listen to the audio on Apple Podcasts, on Spotify, and other places where you listen to your podcast. I love you so much. I'll see you next week. God bless.